Start, yes. So I think we will start now. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, thank you everyone for joining us here in Brussels and online. We have many registers for this event. We are recording for those who do not do that. And so, before getting into long discussions, I will just get right into the subject matter. We have some very exciting, fascinating guests here today from not only here in Brussels, but also from Italy. And we are here to discuss the cooperative principles, that govern cooperatives internationally that are managed by the International Cooperative Alliance, the ICA. And there's a long tradition of the theory and practice of democracy in enterprises, going back at least as far, and certainly probably farther than Robert Owen. We have people like Piotr Kropotkin, the Russian anarchist thinker, all the way up to Ian McPherson and his path-breaking work on the cooperative principles and values. So these are topics we would like to get into today. And of course, there's threats today to the stability of many social systems. We have war, we have pandemics, we have climate change, biodiversity loss. And all of these really do require a deepening of the social, political, and economic and other conversations. So, we have people like John Dewey who said that the problems of democracy can only be solved with more democracy. And so, with projects like Isabelle's, the launch of Democratizing Work, the book last year, and an inquiry into the cooperative values that is going on and being accompanied with the ICA, we thought this would be a nice event to kick off or to start a discussion that I hope will continue beyond this event. And so I think without much further introduction on my part, so maybe just in terms of the organization, I thought it would be interesting to start with the cooperative practitioners. Us academics are always at conferences and talking about various things and issues and having graphs. So, but to start with the practitioners who are on the ground working on and with these issues, and then in the second part to come to myself, Isabelle, Lucio, Biggiero, who will then, so to speak, respond. And we would like to have, of course, questions, feedback, comments from everyone who's here and who's with us virtually. So I think that the idea was to start with Jacques, Jacques Debry, who will be speaking in French and who will introduce the cooperative principles, values, and how they are lived and experienced in Belgium historically, and how they are lived and experienced through institutions like the ICA. So we have slides. I have them here. So now I have to, I'm not the expert with Microsoft Teams to share my screen.
Jerome, would you move next to Jacques so that your camera can show?
Oh yeah, okay.
It would be nicer for people to see you. If you are anyway.
Yes, so. Okay, so here's Jacques Debry of Febecoop, who's the president of Febecoop. I actually forgot to introduce Jacques. So maybe I will go over to Jacques and say a few words. So Jacques is a member of the board at Febecoop, which is a Belgian federation of cooperatives since 1986. He's on the board of Cooperatives Europe since 2018, a member of SFPI International, SFPI Belgium, and he founded a platform cooperative as well, and is managing has been on the managing committee of Multifarma which is a very interesting Belgian cooperative. So, Jacques Debry.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Donc, je souhaite tout d'abord remercier très sincèrement l'Académie Royale et plus spécialement Jérôme de m'avoir invité à participer à ce colloque. Cette invitation m'honore et plus exactement est l'honneur organisation que je représente, c'est-à-dire Febecoop. Donc Febecoop, en quelques mots, c'est une organisation qui regroupe des coopératives belges et qui a une triple mission: la défense et la promotion du modèle coopératif d'entreprise, le développement d'expertise sur ce modèle coopératif dans toutes ses dimensions, que ce soit économique, juridique et plus philosophique, politique. Et troisième axe de la mission de Febecoop, le soutien aux coopératives, c'est-à-dire l'aide, le conseil, l'accompagnement des coopératives. Bien. Alors, venons-en maintenant au sujet qui nous occupe aujourd'hui et au risque de vous surprendre, je ne vous cacherai pas que lorsque j'ai reçu l'invitation de Jérôme, j'ai été au premier abord un petit peu embarrassé. Alors, je m'explique. Il annonçait qu'il souhaitait organiser un débat consistant en un examen critique des principes coopératifs par rapport à l'enjeu de démocratisation des entreprises et qu'il était plus particulièrement intéressé par la confrontation du deuxième principe coopératif, celui qui traite du pouvoir démocratique exercé par les membres, avec l'appel à la démocratisation du travail. Or, et ceci explique mon embarras, il se trouve que les principes coopératifs officiels, ainsi que la doctrine coopérative classique, ont très peu théorisé la question de la participation des travailleurs à la gestion de leurs entreprises et des entreprises en général. Et donc, il faut dissiper immédiatement un éventuel malentendu. Il serait erroné de penser que les coopératives en général sont des lieux où la démocratisation du travail en tant que telle, où la participation des travailleurs fait toujours partie des préoccupations et des pratiques. Ce n'est pas le cas, sauf, bien entendu, on y reviendra, dans les coopératives de travailleurs, c'est-à-dire celles où les associés sont les salariés de l'entreprise. Donc, ceci, pour m'expliquer là-dessus, il convient de retracer un peu l'historique des principes coopératifs et de rappeler ce qui figure exactement dans les principes aujourd'hui. Alors, je vais donc découper mon exposé en faisant d'abord un rappel de la diversité des coopératives, parce que c'est de là que vient le problème, pas le problème, enfin, c'est là que vient l'état des principes tels que nous le connaissons aujourd'hui. Diversité, mais définition et principe unique néanmoins, ce sera la deuxième partie, avec toujours une référence au modèle rochdélien, et je le rappellerai brièvement, avant de passer très vite en revue l'historique des principes coopératifs et de terminer par un bref commentaire du deuxième principe, et plus spécialement en regard de la participation des travailleurs. Bien, donc diversité de la coopération. Alors, effectivement, la coopération n'obéit pas à un projet unique. Il existe plusieurs types de projets coopératifs et les différences sont d'ordre à la fois technique, c'est-à-dire liées à la variété des activités qui sont déployées par les coopératives, mais elles sont souvent plus profondes. Ce sont des différences de projets socio-économiques, je dirais presque de projets politiques qui sous-tend l'entreprise qui est créée sous forme coopérative. Et donc on peut classer les coopératives tout d'abord soit selon le type d'associé, soit selon le domaine d'activité. Selon le type d'associé, vous avez des coopératives d'usagers clients, sur des coopératives de consommation, de distribution, sur des coopératives de crédit lorsque les coopérateurs sont les clients de la banque, de l'institut de crédit, des coopératives de logement, etc., etc. Vous avez les coopératives de travailleurs salariés, c'est-à-dire celles où les ouvriers, les employés sont les associés. Mais vous avez aussi des coopératives d'entrepreneurs indépendants, des coopératives d'artisans, des coopératives de professionnels de toutes sortes de métiers, et on peut ranger la coopération agricole classique dans ce partie-là aussi, puisque ce sont des coopératives d'agriculteurs en tant qu'entrepreneurs agricoles. Et donc, en général, ce qu'ils font dans cette catégorie-là, c'est de mutualiser une partie de leurs ressources ou de leurs activités, ou une partie de ce dont ils ont besoin, soit en amont, soit en aval de leur activité proprement. Bien. Donc, diversité sur le type d'associé, diversité sur le domaine d'activité. Vous avez des coopératives dans la distribution alimentaire, ou la distribution d'autres produits, dans le logement, dans la production de biens et services de toute nature, dans l'agriculture, la banque, l'assurance, etc. On l'a déjà dit. Et donc, on voit bien assez rapidement à quel point on peut se trouver en présence d'initiatives qui sont non seulement différentes techniquement, mais également très différentes quant au projet qui les sous-tend. Et cela va de la collaboration économique, n'est-ce pas, ciblée sur un domaine précis. Comme je l'ai dit, c'est souvent le cas pour les coopératives, par exemple, d'artisans ou les coopératives agricoles, jusqu'à la conception d'un projet global de transformation de la société, c'est-à-dire la volonté de mettre en place une réponse au modèle d'entreprise capitaliste, et donc la volonté de mettre en œuvre une alternative, une autre économie qui soit sociale et solidaire. Donc, voilà pour cette grande variété. On peut encore ajouter qu'il y a encore d'autres complexifications qui s'ajoutent surtout au cours des dernières années, parce qu'il y a des coopératives de premier degré et des coopératives de deuxième degré, c'est-à-dire des constructions par étage. Vous pouvez avoir des mutualités qui créent une coopérative de soins pour leurs membres, ou des syndicats qui créent une coopérative pour des distributions alimentaires à leurs membres, etc., dans des constructions à étage. Vous avez depuis quelques années des coopératives multipartites, c'est-à-dire où il y a plusieurs catégories d'associés, et vous avez même, alors c'est un petit peu un oxymore parce qu'en principe une coopérative est dans sa définition même destinée à ses membres, mais vous avez des coopératives dont l'activité principale est tournée vers l'extérieur et pas vers l'intérieur et pas vers les membres. Donc, grande diversité de la coopération, mais toujours, à travers l'histoire, définition et principes uniques. Alors, où est-ce qu'on trouve les principes coopératifs? On les trouve dans les statuts et les pratiques des coopératives, et on les trouve dans la doctrine coopérative qui les commande depuis 150 ans. La formulation officielle, comme vous le savez, elle émane de l'Alliance coopérative internationale, qui est à la fois une instance de représentation et de promotion de la coopération au niveau international, mais qui joue aussi un rôle normatif pour les coopératives du monde entier. Alors, dans cet exercice normatif, il y a deux constantes qu'il faut souligner à travers toute l'histoire de l'ACI. C'est que, l'ACI a toujours été assez prudente dans la formulation des principes, précise, mais pas trop, naviguant en fait entre une énumération de règles rigoureuses et des prescriptions beaucoup plus élastiques. Et pourquoi? Précisément à cause de la diversité dont j'ai parlé, il fallait que les règles soient à chaque fois acceptables et applicables par toutes les coopératives de quelque nature qu'elles soient. Donc ça, c'est une première constante. La deuxième constante, c'est que tout en se voulant à vocation universelle, l'ACI s'est toujours, néanmoins, référée dans l'exercice de formulation des principes au modèle rochdélien des coopératives. Alors c'est quoi le modèle rochdélien des coopératives? Vous voyez ces braves messieurs pris en photo en 1844 dans leur costume du dimanche, le jour où ils ont signé les statuts de la fameuse coopérative de Rochdale, qui a été créée en Angleterre en 1844, quelque part dans la banlieue de Manchester, à Rochdale plus précisément, et qui s'appelait donc les Équitables Pionniers de Rochdale. Alors, Rochdale, c'est le modèle, je l'ai dit, mais Rochdale, ce n'est pas une coopérative générique abstraite, c'est une coopérative qui obéissait à un projet précis. Et c'est surtout une coopérative d'ouvriers en tant que consommateurs et pas d'ouvriers en tant que travailleurs. Néanmoins, il faut savoir que déjà à l'époque de Rochdale, et même pour une coopérative qui donnait pour vocation d'être coopérative de consommateurs, il y a eu un débat, et d'ailleurs c'est un antagonisme dans le mouvement coopératif, entre deux tendances, la tendance qu'on appelait participationniste et la tendance qu'on appelait plus coopérativiste. La tendance participationniste, comme son nom l'indique, était en faveur de la participation des salariés aux instances décisionnelles de la coopérative, et la tendance coopérativiste concevait la coopérative comme une entreprise détenue par des consommateurs associés qui emploient des salariés dans leur entreprise. Et donc, le courant participationniste, en fait, au départ, surtout en Angleterre, est héritier des premiers penseurs de la coopération, d'Owen en particulier en Angleterre, et qui, eux, concevaient en plus le projet coopératif comme un projet encore plus global, c'est-à-dire un projet qui impliquait une communauté, un groupe, une communauté dans une espèce de micro-république coopérative. Et donc, d'ailleurs, au début, Royale avait eu cette idée aussi. On trouve dans les statuts, dans la version 1844 des statuts, on trouve un article qui dit « Dès qu'il sera possible, cette société entreprendra l'organisation des forces de production, de distribution, de l'éducation et du gouvernement, ou, en d'autres termes, l'établissement d'une colonie se suffisant à elle-même et dans laquelle les intérêts seront unis, ou bien elle viendra en aide à d'autres sociétés pour établir de telles colonies. » Ça, cette idée est un peu au départ. Mais très rapidement, Royale va s'éloigner de cette idée et s'est orienté vers un projet différent, moins totalisant, mais quelque part plus large. C'est-à-dire un projet plus macroéconomique. Et au lieu d'une utopie communautaire, centrée sur un groupe, une utopie qui devait englober l'ensemble de l'économie, l'ensemble de l'organisation socio-économique. Et d'ailleurs, la suite de Royale, ils vont en partie construire ce modèle-là, sachant donc qu'ils vont abandonner officiellement, définitivement, en 1862, l'idée de la participation des salariés. Et donc cette prise de position ne résulte pas, en fait, d'une volonté d'exclure a priori les salariés, mais d'une logique différente de projet. C'est-à-dire, il s'agissait de construire une société socialiste en partant du consommateur et non du travailleur. Et d'ailleurs, ça, on va faire le sujet d'une conférence en soi et je vais aller plus vite, mais la théorisation la plus pure de ce projet coopératif-là, on la trouve en France chez Charles J., qui est un économiste de la fin du XIXe siècle, que certains d'entre vous connaissent certainement, et qui est un théoricien de la coopération, mais qui proposait une organisation économique entièrement fondée sur la souveraineté du consommateur, avec l'idée que les coopératives de consommation grandissent, s'élargissent, elles conquièrent quasi toute la distribution, elles remontent en amont, elles prennent pouvoir sur le commerce de gros, sur la production, et à la fin sur l'agriculture, et le pays est transformé en république coopérative, sans expropriation et sans violence, parce que la coopération a gagné par la concurrence. C'est pas joli, ça. Ça ne s'est pas jamais vraiment passé comme ça, mais en tout cas, c'était cette idée-là qui a été défendue par Charles J notamment, au début, avec beaucoup de conviction. Jérôme, comme dirait 5 minutes, tu me fais un coup de coude pour que je ne déborde pas trop par rapport aux autres orateurs. Donc, maintenant, l'histoire des principes coopératifs, mais on va essayer d'être très synthétique là-dessus parce que ce n'est pas l'objet de passer tout en détail. Et donc, il y a quelques étapes importantes que j'ai reprises sur la slide ici. Bien sûr, il y a les statuts de Royale, parce que ces statuts, j'y reviendrai, ont déjà une énumération très complète des principes, tels qu'ils existent encore aujourd'hui. Et puis, l'Alliance coopérative internationale a été créée en 1895. En 1895, ils n'ont pas rédigé des principes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ils n'ont rien fait de ça, ils ont juste dit qu'ils allaient réfléchir et échanger sur les principes coopératifs. Ils vont par la suite confirmer cela, mais non, ils vont aussi très rapidement faire référence à Royale. Et au congrès de 1921, que je reprends ici, ils ont précisé dans les statuts que le critère d'authenticité coopérative était la fidélité au principe de Royale. Donc, ce n'est la première fois qu'en 1937, donc 42 ans après la création de l'ACI, qu'ils vont se fendre d'un énoncé des principes. Ils seront 7 en l'occurrence, j'y reviendrai tout à l'heure. Et toujours comme il y a de la prudence, les 4 premiers sont considérés comme obligatoires et les 3 suivants sont recommandés et pas vraiment obligatoires. Il y aura une deuxième formulation des principes 30 ans plus tard, en 1966, et une troisième, et donc il n'y en a eu que 3 sur toute l'histoire de la CI, en 1995, qui est la version sur laquelle nous vivons toujours aujourd'hui. Et c'est une version plus complète, mieux formulée que les précédentes, plus soignée, je dirais aussi, puisqu'en plus elle s'inscrit dans une déclaration sur l'identité coopérative qui comporte une définition de la coopérative, que je reprends ici sur le slide et que la plupart d'entre vous connaissent bien sûr. La coopérative est une association autonome de personnes volontairement réunies pour satisfaire leurs aspirations et besoins économiques, sociaux et culturels au moyen d'une entreprise dont la propriété est collective et où le pouvoir est exercé démocratiquement. Donc il y a cette fameuse double qualité dans la définition même. On est à la fois associé et usager de la coopérative. Définition, énumération des valeurs, coopérative, responsabilité personnelle et mutuelle, démocratie, égalité, équité, solidarité, les éléments d'éthique coopérative, honnêteté, transparence, responsabilité sociale et altruisme. Et puis, vient alors l'énumération, bien sûr, des principes que vous connaissez, les 7 principes, adhésion volontaire ouverte à tous, pouvoir démocratique, participation économique des membres, autonomie et indépendance, tout ce qui est éducation, formation, etc., la coopération de coopération, et le 7e principe, engagement envers la communauté. La CI va compléter ce travail quelques années plus tard, en 2015, en publiant des notes d'orientation, c'est une centaine de pages, de commentaires sur le principe, qu'il essaie de les expliciter, et l'objectif est, dit la CI, d'aider les membres coopératifs, les leaders et les cadres à gérer leur coopérative de manière efficace. Bon, donc, ces principes, je voulais juste souligner maintenant, c'est que sur ce slide, vous voyez, dans la colonne de droite, l'énumération de 1995. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Quand vous mettez en regard la version Rochdale, la version 1937, la version 1966, 80%, c'est pareil. Avec des variations dans l'ordre dans lequel on met les choses, avec des variations de vocabulaire parfois, mais en fait, le cœur, en tout cas, le cœur des principes coopératifs qui sont les 3-4 premiers, c'est-à-dire l'adhésion volontaire, le contrôle démocratique et la participation économique des membres, ce principe-là incluant en partie la question de l'affectation des résultats et donc de la propriété collective, ce noyau dur se retrouve sous des formes différentes, plus ou moins bien explicitées à travers toute l'histoire depuis Rochdale jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Et donc, effectivement, à chaque fois, après parfois de longs débats, les conclusions sont sensiblement la même, avec la réaffirmation des principes, avec des énoncés parfois qui connaissent certaines nuances, mais qui demeurent finalement toujours attachés à la pure tradition rochdalienne. Alors, il y a bien sûr des suppressions, comme la vente au comptant, qui faisait sens au XIXe siècle et beaucoup moins après. Il y a des ajouts comme l'invitation à l'intercoopération en 1966 ou l'engagement envers la communauté en 1995, mais comme je l'ai dit, le cœur reste constant. Donc, en fait, les nuances et les subtilités, elles sont beaucoup plus souvent dans le vocabulaire et dans la grammaire, toujours à cause de cette prudence. Hein. L'énoncé de 1937 utilise l'impératif, mais dit que tous ne sont pas obligatoires. L'exposé de 1966 utilise un curieux conditionnel, should en anglais, les coopératives devraient faire ceci, devraient faire cela. Et l'énoncé de 1995 emploie un indicatif, comme si c'était les coopératives font ceci, on n'ose pas dire elles doivent, elles font ça, elles font ceci, elles font ça, comme si c'était juste une constatation statistique. Bon. Donc, voilà, ça c'est amusant, mais il y a cette volonté constante de l'ACI aussi d'éviter des règles trop contraignantes, avec l'obligation, si on émet des règles contraignantes, de sanctionner derrière, la sanction allant jusqu'à l'exclusion. Et la CI a toujours voulu éviter ce débat sur les sanctions pour préserver son unité, préférant, quelquefois, faut-il le dire, des situations inconfortables, se cantonnant toujours dans ce qu'on pourrait appeler une espèce d'œcuménisme de bonne loi, n'est-ce pas? Attitude qui s'est révélée néanmoins forte et payante sur le long terme, puisque 1895, jusqu'à aujourd'hui, la CI existe toujours et regroupe toujours toutes les coopératives qui l'ont. Il faut que je commence à conclure, me dit Jérôme, c'est ça, plus ou moins. D'accord. Parce qu'effectivement, j'ai presque tout dit, puisque j'ai dit que je n'avais pas grand-chose à dire sur la participation des travailleurs. Alors, très vite, sur le deuxième principe, je le cite ici, vous le connaissez, je ne vais pas le lire, il émet le principe du pouvoir démocratique exercé par les membres. Dans les guidelines, dans les notes de 2015, il y a une douzaine de pages qui sont consacrées au principe, au deuxième principe, et qui passent en revue toute une série de sujets que je vous montre là à l'écran et qu'on en a en revue, et qui sont, faut-il le dire, entre nous, quand même beaucoup de généralités, un peu des enfoncements de porte ouvertes parfois, des choses qui sont assez évidentes. Hein. Bon, il y a pas énormément de choses très inventives là-dedans. Enfin, il y a un rappel de toute série de choses qui concernent la démocratie. Il y a des sujets qui sont dits qui ne sont pas abordés, comme la gouvernance démocratique dans les grosses coopératives, dans les coopératives avec plusieurs parties prenantes, ou des questions comme la durée maximale des mandats, etc. Bien. Dernière chose, effectivement, je l'ai assez dit, le deuxième principe ne parle pas nécessairement de la participation des travailleurs. Bien évidemment, dans les coopératives de travailleurs, tout ce qui est posé comme règle concernant le pouvoir démocratique s'applique tel quel aux travailleurs qui sont à la manœuvre et qui sont censés contrôler complètement leur coopérative. Et d'ailleurs, pas seulement le deuxième principe, mais les autres aussi, comme le troisième principe concernant l'affectation des résultats. Tout ça s'applique alors complètement aux travailleurs qui sont les parties prenantes de la coopérative. Dans les autres, et je termine, dans les autres coopératives, la participation des travailleurs n'est pas obligatoire, elle est simplement recommandée. Dans les fameuses notes dont je vous parlais tout à l'heure, il y a un passage sur la voix des employés. Il y a quelques lignes qui recommandent la participation des travailleurs à la gouvernance et qui concluent en disant « Il n'y a pas de mécanisme prescrit pour s'assurer que les employés puissent faire entendre leur voix, mais lorsque c'est le cas, les entreprises coopératives sont plus fortes et plus résilientes. » Merci.
So, merci beaucoup, Jacques. Thank you very much, Jacques. And I'm sorry I did not warn online participants that two of our speakers will be in French today. We have an international audience. I know some don't speak French, so it was very kind of Jacques to at least make his slides accessible to non-French speakers. And so next we have two members of Smart Belgium, Sarah de Heusch and Jerome Lefebvre, and they will be speaking a bit about the role of democratic participation in Smart and generally their own research. So Sarah is actually the chair of Smart and has worked in actually to internationalize this organization, which is a very fascinating new model of a freelancer cooperative, heavily focused in the art scene, of course, which has expanded considerably since its inception, and it is actually running or managing the entrepreneur, the International Cooperative Entrepreneurship Think Tank's working group on the future of work, CCOP's working group on non-standard work, and works at the crossroads of research, networking, and advocacy on freelancing, non-standard employment, digital labor, access to social protection, cooperatives, democracy at work, and commons. So I would like to give the word over to Sarah. Do you have slides or no? Okay, wonderful. So
yeah. I don't have slides. Can everybody hear okay? Because, yeah, okay.
Maybe orienting the camera would be great.
yes.
Especially without lights.
Sorry, I was just checking the chat. See if there's okay.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a very interesting topic. I'm really happy to be here to talk about these topics of democracy and democratic principle in the cooperatives. Just to make sure, I'm not chair of SMART, I'm chair of ethical committee of SMART. Just a smaller part of it. Yeah. So I'm just going to give you a few words about SMART, so maybe you can understand a bit better where we are working. In fact, we are a multi-stakeholder worker co-op. We consider ourselves as a shared enterprise where freelance can develop their economic activities in an autonomous way. They can be autonomous in the development of their activity, but they also benefit of two types of solidarity, which are mutualization of means and risks. And also the most protected legal status, which is the one of salaried worker. So it's really an alternative to being self-employed, but also an alternative to having to create your own structure, because we know that both situations can lead to precarity or difficult economic situations. Yes, we really support freelancers. They have very broad profiles, let's say, from truly strong entrepreneurs to occasional workers, and they have like a lot of variety of workers. And we help them with all the administrative, legal, fiscal aspects. We have an online tool, but we also have services that are in different cities in Belgium and different countries. You mentioned I participated in internationalization, so it's very funny because Jurek will be talking about BeesCoop. I've been working with him in the internationalization of smarts, but that was another part of it. We started out as a non-profit organization for artists, quickly expanded to the creative sector because it was a whole ecosystem that had to be supported. And it was, we've often had a debate internally of do we have to open up to other sectors of activities or not? And also when we went international, we realized that actually what we were providing as services was interesting for a much broader population, of course, but also it was the cooperative model is what we discovered when we went international, and we realized it was the best, legal status or type of structure for what we were doing, and to resume the relationship between the co-op and the work, well, the structure and the workers and so on. So it was only in 2015 that we really started to think of how we were of becoming a cooperative. And there's so many cooperative models, even for worker co-ops, that we decided that we would really start a participatory process where we would include our members, our clients, employees of at the time, nonprofit, in the designing of the cooperative, basically. But we were already big. We already are international, and we already big. We already had like over 15,000 members at least. So today we are a cooperative company approved as a social enterprise. That's how I translate the Belgian legal status. I hope it's the right term. And the process that led to the cooperative of today is called Smart in Progress. And it started in 2015, as I said, and it started with different ways of participating. We invited researchers and members and people who were active in our sector to contribute in writings, to feed in a blog. We organized talks with members of the at the time, nonprofit organization. And most of all, we organized 4 working groups that had each a specific topic, and where all the community in and around SMART could come and decide how SMART was going to, what type of cooperative SMART was going to become. There were 4 topics at the time. The first one was becoming a cooperative for whom and with whom. The second one was debating about the economic model. The third one was about the tools and services. Did we want to enlarge them? Did we want to stop some, and so on? And the fourth one was about the type of governance. And so for 6 months, regular working groups were really debating about these topics. Each working group was separate. They made recommendations, and those recommendations were then validated or not by the board and then the General Assembly. And they really fed into the actual legal status of the cooperative. That took another extra year before it was actually stated and registered at the moment. we continued each year in doing new working groups. Often the themes were recommendations of a previous working group. For example, the ethical committee, but Jerome will be talking about it later on, was a recommendation of the first working group on the cooperative with whom and for whom. This working group stated officially that SMART should be for anybody who wants or needs it. But in order to stay, to keep the values and not go astray, we would have to create an ethical committee that would make sure that there's coherence between the values and the practices of the cooperative. And so the next year, one of the working groups was, what does an ethical committee look like? And then a 2 years later, it was actually set up. But so every year there were new working groups and new recommendations, and by 2022 we had over 200 recommendations, and we realized that we hadn't been able to to put in all of them into place. No, it was not possible. And you don't want to create frustration either, because if you start a process, you tell people, are you going to make recommendations, we're going to do it, and nothing happens, then people may start to lose faith in what you're doing. And so we started a whole work of reorganizing the priorities, the recommendations, because some of them were repetitions, others were kind of overlapping or could have worked well together. And so we did all this work and we prioritized them as well. And then the board validated the priority and also the General Assembly, of course. But not only did we prioritize them and restructure them, we also decided to try something else, because trying new practices in democracy, it's about experimenting and also knowing when you have to stop, when you have to look back and change, maybe, and retune, fine tune. And so what we started this year, actually a few weeks ago, if I'm not wrong, is the Smart Labs. So it's still part of the Smart in Progress, which is still like the overarching participatory process. But these labs are a bit different. It's not about making new recommendations, we can't cope with those, but it's about dealing with the themes that are already on the table and that have been prioritized, and making sure that also the community is there to help us implement them, actually. So the ongoing topics that have been selected, but they can be new topics that happen, but it's really putting it in the hands of the members, and the cooperative is there to help them bring them on and accomplish them. So the topics that are now being developed in the Smart Labs, there's the first one is consolidated activity in Smart. How can we help you? Basically, we realize that we have some members that invoice a lot, that have a huge activity, but that our services are not adapted to their way of functioning. Sometimes they have to leave the cooperative and they don't necessarily want to. And therefore, we're working with these members to see how we can improve services for them. This has been a long debate in SMART for a long time. So we're happy to work with our members on that topic. The second one is more linked to a sector of activity. It's about jewelries, and it's how to improve their way of working and merchandising. The third one is it's actually something that started independently in the city of Charleroi, and it's called the Croissant and Cooperations, and it's basically a meetup between members where they can share experience, knowledge, talk about things they'd like to see developed, and so on. The fourth topic is about flea market, food trucks, everything that's kind of in the streets, not really, that has specific legal aspects that are a bit complex sometimes, and we're there to help members understand these legal frameworks on how to develop their activities. But it's also about peer learning between members so that they can help them each other with tips. The fifth topic is about legal recognition of the craftsman and shared enterprise. And this is interesting to me because we've been working on that as advocacy level with the authorities in Belgium, because craftsmen don't really have a legal status, but the legal authorities provide a kind of a label just to prove that they are recognized, established, and good, and that they help them in some aspects. But for people who develop their activity within the shared enterprise, they don't have access to it because of legal barriers, because it's an innovative model and the legislation doesn't always understand what a shared enterprise is. Sometimes I like to joke and say, well, you know, car sharing, right? Well, it's the same thing with an enterprise. You don't need your own enterprise. You plug in whenever you need, and sometimes you can use it all the time, or just sometimes, but basically we provide everything you need for to run a business. And the sixth topic, it also linked to advocacy work, but it's more in the Walloon region. There's been a new taxation on professional use of vehicles. There is a reduced taxation on certain types of vehicles if you use them for your profession. Once again, our members don't have access to it, so we're working with our members to go further in that advocacy. So you see, it's a lot about peer learning. It's also about developing services for SMART. It has different aspects to it than just working groups, and it's not recommendation, it's hands-on. In fact, once again, we're also going to experiment because we're going to try hackathons as well. So hackathons, for those who don't know what it is, it comes from the IT world, and it's really about taking a day, 2 or 3, and we work all together until we get to our objective, and we don't move from where we are. So we're continuing on experimenting different ways of making our members participate, because for us, participation of members in working groups, in developing topics, in developing services is also a way of making it's a democratic participation, and I think it's very important. So as I mentioned, Smart in Progress is still the overarching branding, we can say, of this democratic participation, and but it evolves. So now it's not just recommend, it's also do and learn principles. And what we've learned also throughout these years through this participation is that it's not just about democracy, it's also actually about the fifth cooperative principle, which is the one of education, training, and information. When people participate, they also learn. They learn more about how the cooperative works. They learn more from each other as well. And so it's a multi-level training kind of place. And usually people are very happy to participate because of all these different aspects that are involved in these participations. Well, now I'm going to leave the word to Jerome. I got my word. And he's going to talk to us more about governing bodies within SMART, because we've also been a little bit there, but we try.
Yeah.
Also, no slides?
No slides.
Oh, my job is very easy.
Board and General Assembly represent minimum democratic requirements for COPs. The legal framework provides little things to know how we make in practice. Board and General Assembly are young, smart. There have been empowered step by step. There was necessary to develop better information and training. Board members must be integrated. They have an experience of the cooperative because they use common tools and smart services, but they must understand something deeply: history, project, strategy. And it's obvious to understand the responsibilities, their responsibilities on the board. The cooperative set up training for that, and daily we work to produce information to understand topics of challenge and to aid decision making. We work to constitute a group of people, of members of board, and to learn to work together because it's not an evidence. To facilitate that, we change organizational process. The board was renewed every 4 years. It was an integral renewal. All members stop their mandate and election renew all members. we choose to make partial renewal every year. This change helps to keep transmission between new and old members, but the onboarding with training and information is even more essential in regular boards can take place if we choose give the place without putting all the topics. We are working to develop topics, address and create discussion to involve the members board. SMART has been a cooperative since 2017. It's young and recent, but SMART statutes have changed twice since it's a cooperative. So there have been the change with the new code of companies and association and to align with legal framework, but the change of SMART statutes contain different evolution process and specific things for the democracy, access term of shareholder, new category, renewal board, So SMART project talk about work, self-employed, social protection, freelance are their own boss, fight against domination or subordination. Even if we are cooperative, we decide together. It's obvious to address working conditions for the team support. We propose smart services and animate common, but it's challenge for freelance worker. The employees' representative bodies are a space to be reinvented without decrease their role, but to create the binary relation between boss and employees. We are working to develop participation to address working conditions. 3 years ago, to involve members to the social election, step by step, first of all, the vote in the legal frame. All members are not concerned. Before the future election, we wish organize a workers' assembly to address working condition with freelance identity and employees identity. The goal is to talk about more content. We look a lot for reform the organization, but less post content. It's necessary to involve the content topics and working condition. Ethical committee is an example of our use. Members wanted to set up an ethical committee. Is not a legal obligation. It's own choice. We go beyond the legal frame. The committee mixed selection of members, employees of team support, members, external experts. We have make a random selection for members. It's an innovation we propose members who have not asked themselves the question to participate in committee, and we mobilize these members. In January, we organized the first encounter with different governance bodies, board, company advice,
What's fancy? Works council.
Work Council, Ethical Committee and Management Team. We wish improving exchange and knowledge among these governance bodies. The first encounter allowed to improve knowledge about the role of different governance bodies and world representation of different governance bodies. We discovered that everything was not so clear. And governance bodies have often linked one-to-one, one body with one body, but not with a complex vision, complex relation with all bodies, of all governance bodies. People have different identities, self-employed, freelance, employee, shareholder, and can participate in different space, in different bodies, but there are a lot of topics and terms. All people don't talk about all terms in all bodies, but they have to talk together. It's also learning to buy an opinion and vote or decide. It's necessary to give time for that.
I'm just going to make a very quick conclusion from this experience of SMART and all these experimentations and different ways of participating to the democratic life of the cooperative. It's a bit like the conclusion that Jacques was saying. The cooperative principles are very large and they leave a lot of room for maneuver and for invention and for experimenting within them. And very different practices can emerge in the same cooperative during the years, but also following the type of cooperative that develop. And actually, democratic practices can be enforced or kept minimal, and that is a political choice of the cooperative. And it takes a lot of resources to have a vibrant, lively democratic practice in a cooperative. That should not be underestimated. I think that not all cooperatives can dedicate all that energy and money to that. And when they can, they must. I mean, it's been a great experience that we've been living here, and it's not finished, it's not perfect, and we're continuously trying to improve. And in fact, that's why we continue to say, and even organized an event not long ago, which the title was Democratic Practices, It's an Endless Experimentation, and we just have to go for it and learn from our lessons and try to improve all the time. That's it for us.
So thank you, Sarah and Jerome, for this fascinating panoramic view of the development of SMART. And I certainly have some questions, but before we get to those, we have actually two more speakers. One is Jurek Jadowitz, who actually is also a founder of SMART. I found out actually in doing some research, but who's going to speak now about his work founding and growing a BeesCoop, which I'm very curious about. So maybe we'll just continue this passing the laptop.
Well, we are staying for a choice. Either I inflict you my rusty Globish English, or you go for a more fluent French speech.
Well,
Second one is fine for me.
okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the online participants, maybe there are some who don't speak French, so maybe the rusty English would be guessing.
Okay, your fault. Okay. As you have heard, SMART is a very complex enterprise, and all the subjects linked to democracy in it are even complex. The BeesCoop is that, in comparison, a really simple project, and the problems are perhaps easier to explain and to see how they develop. So the BeesCoop, very shortly, a presentation of the BeesCoop for those not knowing it. It is also a young cooperative. The initial point was a journey to New York, where they found a cooperative, the Park Slope Food Company Cooperative, and the founders decided to copy the model, and the Bees is indeed a copy-paste of the Park Slope Food Company from New York. The project started in September 2014, and after an experiment phase, the cooperative, the BeesCoop, opened in September 2017. The characteristics of the structure, the legal form, it is une société coopérative à responsabilité limitée et à finalité sociale, strictly non-profit. There is no distribution of dividends or other financial benefits of any kind, which means that all profits made are either redistributed to the members via a reduction in the profit margin, and therefore a reduction in the prices in the supermarket, or used to finance the investments, the necessary investments approved by the General Assembly. One strange feature of the statutes of the cooperative is that the company is not to grow. Even in case of success, there will be no second or third or fourth BeesCoop. The statutes provide, however, for support for similar initiatives in the form of experience sharing, management tools, team training, etc., which, in my opinion, will lead to the creation someday of a second stage cooperative to manage the common features of many cooperatives of the same kind. Okay, the figures, just to give an image. The number of cooperators is about 1,500. The number of people allowed to shop is about 3,000, because every cooperator has a family, and those are allowed to shop. Yearly turnover, 4 million euros. Okay, this was the snapshot. The outline of the structure's operation. There is a board, of which I am an eminent member, elected by the General Assembly. And the particularity is that the board members and the employees form a coordination committee. So the board is much involved in the day-to-day decisions, which makes its role important as a link between the General Assembly and the project. Another important feature of the organization is the members' office, which manages the rather heavy machinery of members' participation. So every member has to work in the cooperative. There are shifts, and those shifts have to be managed. And what seduced me when I joined the Bees was the fact that the rules of this mandatory participation and work of the cooperators, the rules are really strict and heavy. This is normal, but they are applied with all the necessary understanding of each one problems. So strong rules and supple implementation, which is something that I really tried to apply in Smart. Another feature is an accounting and finance committee, also composed of cooperators, which makes something really unusual. The accounting of the society, of the enterprise is made by voluntary cooperators. We have no accountant. And the miracle is that it works. It is really a dangerous feature because the voluntary cooperators could fail. They don't. And it is just waiting, but it probably won't last long before we really have a professional accounting system. We have a lot of ad hoc committees, much too much of them, needing for transversal committee, a committee of committees, which is the only one means to share information within the enterprise. So, the cooperative obligation to work results in a very strong community spirit between the cooperators. For those not having been in the coop, I invite you sincerely to do so, just to compare the sphere of well-being and with the willingness between people at the Bees with the same features in your preferred Deleuze or another supermarket. And now to democracy. What surprised me enormously is the vitality of the General Assemblies. Well, 1,500 members. We have 4 general assemblies a year, which is much. And each of them having between 30 in the COVID period and 120 members being there for a whole afternoon discussing problems of the cooperative. Again, my experience with the smart General Assembly cannot even be compared with such a result. And the General Assemblies take decisions, approve or do not approve proposals.
Yeah.
This vitality is due to the use of collective intelligence tools. And I have a word later on about the collective intelligence tools, are really marvelous, but have limits. And we are just struggling with the limits of those tools. Another feature of democracy within the Bees is the autonomy of the employees. The employees are really free to organize themselves in the day-to-day business. And they do this. It is a very strong feature. The crew is 9 people, 7.5 full-time equivalents. And they have weekly meetings where they discuss the day-to-day business problems. And then they participate in the coordination committee, which I said. And there are discussed all the tactical decisions and all the strategic decisions to be transmitted to the General Assembly, who decides, approves, or rejects the proposals. The tools of collective intelligence we use are mainly the decision taking by consent. Which leads to a non-approval of a proposal if objections are made and cannot be suppressed. It is a very powerful tool to enhance the participation of people who, without the use of this tool, wouldn't speak, wouldn't participate. So it is really a fantastic tool. But the limit is that the decision taking by consent doesn't work in a political debate. The decision by consent is fantastic when the goals are predefined. So you discuss how to reach the predefined goals. It works. It works really good. But if you have to discuss the goals to be reached, the political discussion, the strict application of this process of decision making leads to non-decisions. And we have the problem, and we are trying now to define different levels of decisions to be taken. And we try to adapt the process-taking method in order to be able to take them.
I will debate with you about that. I'll take a debate about that.
It's supposed to be a cross-examination, so the debate is welcome.
So we have very democratically set up workshops to discuss it with members. And we most probably in the autumn of this year, we will be able to redraft our statutes and our internal rules of procedure.
Thank you, Jurek. And that is it for our on-site practitioners. We have one other practitioner presenter. Leo, are you there? I'm not looking for Leo, because
He seems to be there.
because Leo is I never know how to pronounce your last name because you're from Finland and Finnish is not my easiest language. Anyway, Leo is can introduce himself as well. Samal Hand, I think is his last name. You can correct me. And is a rank and file member, actually, of several consumer cooperatives, because we're discussing the second cooperative principle of democratic member participation. I thought inviting some rank and file cooperative members to discuss this principle would be actually quite revealing.
He says he's muted.
You are muted.
I just unmuted him.
Yeah, okay. So, so Leo is involved with, I think, S Group and as well as OP Financial Group, two Finnish consumer cooperatives, and would like to talk about some of his, experiences there. And I'm looking to unmute you. Let's see.
To me, it should work.
So Isabelle is saying you should be able to.
Mm-hmm.
So I've added you now as a speaker.
Okay, now it seems to work.
So welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll open up the slides. I have few prepared. Open share. Right. Okay, can you see?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a rank and file member of few Finnish large consumer cooperatives, and in addition, I've also been involved in starting few cooperatives and worked in a worker cooperative for 5 years.
Leo, can you hear me?
I can hear it. Yeah.
The presentation mode, because we see some comments.
Okay. Oh, let me try again.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's try again. Sorry about this. Okay, now. Everybody can see and hear? Yeah, okay. So the Finnish economy has been described as the most cooperative economy in the world. And there are two large consumer cooperatives. The other is SGroup, and SGroup has 2.4 million members. Now, Finland has about 5.5 million members. So that's more than half of the adult population, if I'm correct. And it's the largest grocery retailer in the country with nearly half of the entire market share. And it also runs a large gas station, restaurant, hotel, funeral, and a banking business. It's the largest private sector employer in the country. It has about 40,000 employees. And in addition, there's the OP Financial Group, or the OP Bank. It, on the other hand, has about 2 million members, and it's the largest bank in the country with 39% market share in deposits and 38% in lending to individuals and non-financial sector businesses. And it's even more, it's overrepresented, especially with small and medium-sized businesses and businesses in rural areas. And it also runs the largest insurance company in the country, if you exclude pension and unemployment insurance companies, which sort of semi-publicly owned or you have to join them. It's a law. Can everybody hear me right? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. And the SGroup elections are multi-party elections. So the SGroup is a secondary cooperative consisting of 19 regional cooperatives. And then the regional cooperatives nominate the board of the central cooperative, which has 21 members currently, and it includes 2 representatives from employees. So in that way, it is a bit of a multi-stakeholder cooperative, at least when it comes to governance, not when it comes to profit sharing. And the turnout in the largest cooperative, which is the Helsinki area, Helsinki is the capital of Finland, the turnout has been 21% in 2012, 26% in 2016. And I think this is important because typically as cooperatives get bigger, their voter turnout goes down. But actually here we can see that it went up. And while 21% or 25%, that might not seem like a big number, it's much bigger than in, say, US credit unions, although US credit unions are much smaller on average. So I think this simplistic idea that once cooperative gets bigger, sort of member participation goes down, I think it's a bit too simplistic. There's some truth to it, but SGroup shows that it's not, it doesn't have to be true. So in US credit unions, where the average number of members is about 20,000, there the vote participation is few percentage points. So SGroup has tenfold larger voter turnout. OP Bank is a bit different in that there are no political parties. It's just that the individuals with most votes get elected, and they have roughly similar structure where regional cooperatives nominate the board of the secondary central cooperative, and there is no employee representation. And I would like to notice that this is a bit simplistic explanation of the government. That roughly this is how it works. And only 5% in 2022. So I stood in elections for SGroup in 2020 and in both of these OP bank groups. I was not elected in either time, but yeah. So my perspective on the problems, and I tried to bring up some novel problems where a lot of the literature on cooperatives, it focuses a lot on, managerial capture and how everything is the fault of managers, to sort of put it roughly. But I think one of the problems I've noticed there is that differences between candidates is very difficult to tell for ordinary voters, for ordinary members who vote. It's very, there is no sort of party manifestos about different policies. It's every candidate seems to campaign on sort of very similar vague themes. It's hard to know who to vote for and what you get if you vote somebody instead of somebody else. And then this might be a bit controversial. I think a lot of the problems also have to do with members themselves, and members are in cooperative literature often nothing is sort of they are pure angels, and everything is the fault of managers and those in the decision-making part. But I think there is also a problem with members in that a lot of the activity there is very much critical, where they criticize sort of what's wrong with the cooperative and criticizing that some decisions which might be understandable are criticized, and it's often very vague. So I often hear like, oh, they have abandoned the cooperative principles. These big cooperatives are no longer real cooperatives. But then when I ask, so what is it concretely that they should do to be a real cooperative? I get answers like with the cooperative bank, for example, that, oh, they are closing a lot of branches. And that I think, you know, the branch density of a bank has nothing to do with whether the bank is a cooperative or not. And some of the criticism is I think, a bit incoherent in the sense that, for example, the branch closures are a result of people no longer using branches. So while the members say they want the branches to be open, the members don't actually use those branches. So it's quite understandable that they are being closed. So there is that's sort of my problem. And I would like to propose some solutions to these problems. So for the first problem, the differences between candidates is difficult to tell. I think one solution for these mass membership cooperatives could be these political or voter compass thing, where you use a questionnaire that candidates and voters answer, and then the members are matched with candidates that best align with their views. So, for example, you ask all the members and all the candidates, should the co-op bank improve its core services or offer a more diverse range of services tailored to individual needs? And then the voters and the candidates answer these questions, and then they are matched. And the problem here might be who decides these questions and how they are articulated. And I believe we have Simon Peck here, and I have an idea for a solution for this, which I think Simon Peck, who's a researcher looking into the sortition and sort of randomly chosen councils of members in cooperatives, he might like this. So I think we should use sortition to select, using lottery, a representative group of members that works together with the staff of the cooperative to decide what questions are asked and how the questions are articulated. And the OP Bank actually had this thing where the members could answer this questionnaire and the candidates answer this questionnaire and they're matched. But I was not very satisfied with the questions there. They were sort of a bit vague and broad, and some of them were articulated in a bit leading way. But I really appreciate that they did that they had this machine, this questionnaire to help members choose their candidate. Now, the other problem here that members mostly criticize the cooperative, and the criticism is vague. I think one area where we could move towards sort of vague criticism towards clear constructive proposals is simply different sort of idea competitions and crowdsourcing and collective intelligence that the previous presenter from the Cooperative, BeesCoop, mentioned that they use these different tools of collective intelligence, and I think that's a brilliant idea. And there are two examples of this that I would like to bring up. So first is the French, I don't know how to pronounce that, who is the boss cooperative, which is it's you could describe it as a consumer cooperative, but it's not actually, they don't have stores, it's a food brand. And the idea is that if you buy that food brand, they pay the producers, the farmers, much better than other food brands. And it's the fastest growing new food brand in France. And the most popular, the flagship product is a milk brand that was created as a result of deregulation of the dairy market in the EU, which led to a lot of issues with French dairy farmers. So they brought up this milk brand that if you buy it, the farmers get paid more fairly. And this is from where they had 8 million consumers that buy their products every day. And during the pandemic, the sales have boomed. And they have this idea where you can join as a member, and the membership doesn't give you any economic benefits, but it gives you a right to go to an online community that decides on the details of the products. So how much the farmers are paid, how the produce is grown, stored, packaged. And what I find crazy here is that they actually have a democratic process to set the price. Now, there's probably some parameters in which they have to decide the price, but you would sort of think that if there is some area where sort of markets instead of democracy should work, it should be pricing. But apparently it sort of works, and it kind of makes sense, because if you know the price has been set up democratically by ordinary people, a bit like you, maybe you're more willing to pay that price. But I find that fascinating, that you can use this democratic process on setting a price for a product. So that's something to think about. And it has spun off many success stories, including the most popular egg and organic butter brand in the country. And again, these are few year old. I don't know if I don't follow the French egg and organic butter market, so maybe the rankings have changed. But anyways, it's been a very, very popular product. And then there's another one, which is Migros, which is the leading grocery retailer in Switzerland, owned by over 2 million people. It also is the largest private sector employer in Switzerland, runs the largest adult education provider, and also operates the second largest fitness facility chain in all of Europe. And they launched this Wikipedia platform where you get feedback on products, and you sort of collectively brainstorm with the ordinary members about new products and existing products. And I think it was launched in 2010, and in the first 4 years that 20,000 product ideas generated. So the process is that Migros defines a question and posts it to the community for brainstorming. And after 2 weeks, the co-op boils down the ideas, tests prototypes, and makes a post to the community where they get more feedback for 1 and 2 weeks. And these products that have been crowdsourced through Wikipedia, they have a lower failure rate than other products. So this works as well. And they come up with absolutely crazy ideas that nobody would thought would work. So for example, here is an example of toothpaste that tastes like mojito. And they decided on they voted, this was an idea from members, and they decided between 2 different ways to design the toothpaste packaging. But here you can sort of see that they come up with these sort of funny and bit crazy ideas that work. And I think that this sort of crowdsourcing of products, it can create these cooperatives to become more like somehow less sort of serious and more, I don't know, relatable and stuff like that. I don't know really how to articulate it, but I hope you grasp what I'm saying. They become more sort of funny and attention-catching in new ways that I don't think typical product design would come up with. So one of the things that we could combine these 2 things, where it's the sort of questionnaires for members and candidates and product product idea competitions or such would be that when you have these questionnaires for members and candidates in elections, you would not just allow them to say, okay, I agree or disagree, but you would also have this simple field where people could propose their own ideas. So for example, if the candidates and the members are asked in the cooperative elections that should the cooperative improve its core services or offer a more diverse range of services, at the end of the questions there could be like, hey, do you have an idea on what could be a new service or how we could improve existing services? And here's just an example that maybe the cooperative bank could match like old age members who have a pet insurance to volunteer members who could take care of their pets in case the owner is hospitalized. And I won't go into details, but this was one of the sort of proposals I had when I campaigned during the OP bank elections. It's very simplified into one sentence, but if I would explain it more longly, it would make sense. But this is not the right place for me to explain this. And I think also one of the most important principles for cooperatives for me is cooperation between cooperatives. And I think that we could combine these idea competitions together with big old cooperatives supporting new and small cooperatives. So maybe these big mass membership cooperatives, they could have like these Coop Ideas of the Year competitions where, you know, members could pitch their new ideas for cooperatives, and then other members could vote on the members' ideas for cooperatives, and the most popular ideas would be selected to an incubator for new cooperatives. And I think this has this would have some advantages compared to sort of conventional charitable work that cooperatives do, where they take members' money and give it to some charitable organizations, which can be good, but I think it has some problems, because I think ordinary charitable work sort of treats symptoms of social illness, whereas if this money would be borrowed lent or invested into new cooperatives, I think that would sort of create some sort of self-sustaining enterprises that would tackle the structural root causes of social ills. And obviously, if it's borrowed or invested instead of donated, the cooperative doesn't lose the money, it makes a return. So that would bring tangible economic benefits to members. And another problem I have with this sort of charitable giving is that you sort of take members' money and you give it to some charitable organizations. That can be good, but then there's the question of why don't you just give that money to the members, and the members can decide whether they want to donate it to a charity or not. And I think here, if you sort of crowdsource cooperative ideas set up by the members, that dynamic changes a bit, because the members the money does not go from members to charitable organizations. It goes from members to other members who set up cooperatives. And especially if these cooperatives that receive investment or lending are chosen by ordinary members, then it's a different type of dynamic. And then there's another advantage here would be that if a big and old cooperative would support members to set up new small cooperatives, those members that have set up these new cooperatives, they could be great candidates for board members for the old cooperatives, because they acquire skill and fresh ideas and experience on how to run a cooperative. So, you know, in my sort of dream world, these big cooperatives, their boards and member representatives would come from sort of small and new cooperatives, and this would intertwine these big and old cooperatives together with each other. So yeah, this presentation might be a bit all over the place, but I hope you liked it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Leo. And that's it for the input, at least for the practitioner side. By the way, maybe just a very quick advertisement. Tomorrow we have a follow-up session on some of these topics you've mentioned now, these interlocking or networks of boards and members. So we actually will be talking with Lucio Biggiero, who's sitting next to me here, about actually network methods for social phenomena tomorrow. So those who have not registered, maybe reach out to me, and we will continue the discussion tomorrow. So that's a bit of advertisement, suspense. Now it would be good to have a short question and answer session, or medium question and answer session for the speakers. And if anyone, even from online, or especially since online participants have had very little interaction, has questions, this would be the time to pose those. You can raise your hand, you can put them in the chat, or people here in the room as well have questions. Yes, please address them, or as you like, or we can do this in a very anarchistic way, or we can do it in a very military. Yes, I mean, if no one else has questions, I have certainly some. I'm seeing maybe some.
Well, if there's not a question, I wanted to.
Yes, sure.
To
of course, if
jump
you have, if some of the speakers have questions.
I wanted to jump on the comments you did on the decision by consent, because in the ethical committee, that's something that we don't do it by the book, but we make sure that so first of all, we make recommendations, we don't make decisions, but we don't have specific topics. I mean, we get topics that can be very diverse that arrive on our table, and they're like, okay, this is the problem, and it comes to the ethical committee, and then we have to make a recommendation. So there's no straight view on option A or B. It's like, we have to come up with something that is not straightforward. Well, it has to be straightforward, but there's not already something planned. Mm-hmm. And when I say we don't do it by the book, it's because of the complexity of these questions. But when I say that we do it by consent, is because we make sure that everybody agrees and that there are no objections to the way the recommendation is formulated. And actually, we've managed to work quite well like that. I mean, we've managed to produce quite some recommendations, but it's we don't really do it by the book. Like, we start with a first round of, okay, this is the case. We get all the information, preliminary information from, maybe it's, something's already in the pipeline, in SMART, we give the information, maybe this is the topic we've already tackled. So we get the demand as it is, and we complement the information. And then we start with the first round of, okay, what's your input? And then we kind of synthesize that input and like, are we agreeing with this point of view? And then that's when the debates start to have, and then we kind of go down to, okay, now we all agree on this and we can recommend this. So that's why I just wanted to say that, at least from my experience. But then in the ethical committee of SMART, it's random selection of the members, but it's true that we see that people who participate in this ethical committee they have kind of a family of idea that is quite close, because A, they chose SMART, and because B, they decided to be involved, because we selected them randomly, but they accepted to participate. So it's already a sort of profile of members for sure. But I just wanted to say that it can work well too. I can imagine that it can be complicated in other spheres, but some of the topics that we tackle are sometimes quite, I can't say political, but still very strong issues for us. And we find that we've managed to work well.
It's fantastic, but may I answer?
No, yes, of course. Democracy. No.
So it's fantastic when it works.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of not working. So you have two proposals, identical, but for one point, and it happened in the Bees, we had to decide about who is allowed to participate to a work group redefining the statutes. And So both proposals were who might, how will the committee work, and so on. And the point of the disagreement was that one proposal allowed everyone, every cooperator, to be candidate to this committee. And the other proposal said, no, the people involved in committees already are not allowed to be part of the committee defining the new statutes. So you have two proposals, identical but for this one point, and there is an objection to both of them, not to be resolved. So, and this is a bad situation, and blocking every possible solution. And so we stood before this bad situation, and the solution was came from an academicus from French sociologist who said, okay, this is a bad situation, and I'll try to find ways out. And he did. But so it's but it was really ad hoc thinking and ad hoc trying to find a way out. In the meantime, the committee is a very strong the governance committee who opposed the presence of experienced people in the work group explodes or implodes. So we now have no more governance committee because it disappeared, and we have a new work group established and led by a third-part person, the sociologist, the French sociologist. This is the example of real bad situations in important issues.
So it takes sociologists to work with
Yes, it was my point to stress that.
Isabelle, you can tell us in classes why people should pursue a professional degree in sociology.
I have three questions. So one for Jacques and the other two for Sarah, and your name I don't. Jurek. So for Jacques, I'd like to know what you think. I mean, some kind of speculation about. I mean, in the principles. So one big question is. Can cooperatives have employees that are non-cooperative members? So yes or not, and what are the implications of that choice? This is the question for you, then the others for the other two.
Parce qu'on va avoir des coopératives où les travailleurs ne sont pas.
Oui.
C'est ça. Hein?
Yes, c'est.
Et qu'est-ce que c'est comme ça?
Je réponds en français, je m'excuse.
Okay.
Tu m'aides s'il faut traduire. Oui, et c'est même le cas le plus fréquent. Tout ce que j'ai expliqué tout à l'heure, c'est que le concept coopératif, c'est une entreprise créée par ses usagers. Mais les usagers de l'entreprise, ça peut être les clients, ça peut être les fournisseurs, ça peut être les travailleurs. mais ce n'est pas toujours les travailleurs. Et statistiquement, c'est même le modèle le moins répandu. En Belgique, certainement, il y a très peu de coopératives de travailleurs. Je les connais presque toutes. C'est toutes des relativement petites coopératives. Elles ont... oui, le cas de Smart, c'est un cas particulier. C'est un cas particulier. Hors Smart, excuse-moi. Les coopératives de travailleurs, donc, sont, en Belgique, elles sont... L'Union des coopératives de travailleurs en Wallonie, qui s'appelle l'UCLouvain, il me dit, que je vois régulièrement, il me dit, nous sommes une réserve d'Indiens. Donc, voilà. Donc, le modèle le plus fréquent est un modèle où les coopérateurs sont des usagers clients, en réalité, soit dans les coopératives de consommation, les clients des magasins, ou bien les clients de la production électrique, ou bien pour les coopératives éoliennes, ou bien les clients de la banque. Le groupe, par exemple, au Canada, les caisses de jardin, les coopérateurs, ce sont les clients de la banque. Et donc, voilà, c'est ce que je disais tout à l'heure, les travailleurs sont rarement coopérateurs de la coopérative, d'autant plus que historiquement, maintenant ça a changé, mais historiquement, pratiquement toutes les coopératives étaient il n'y avait qu'une seule catégorie de coopérateurs, d'associés, c'était les clients, consommateurs, point. Aujourd'hui, on a développé des modèles de coopératives plus complexes, où il y a plusieurs catégories. Et il peut y avoir effectivement des coopératives où il y a alors on fait des classes de parts différentes, et ça peut avoir des incidences sur la gouvernance, ça dépend comment on l'organise, c'est encore une autre question, mais donc il y a des parts pour les clients, il y a des parts pour les travailleurs, et donc on a, par exemple, dans cet exemple-là, deux groupes d'associés, travailleurs d'une part, clients d'autre part. Mais ça, c'est quelque chose qui existe depuis, je crois, 20-30 ans et qui n'existait pratiquement pas avant.
Okay. I mean, and in that case, would be, let's suppose, industrial cooperatives. In that case, would the surplus will be distributed equally between members and non-members, or would that be a difference between them?
Donc, si c'était une coopérative industrielle, est-ce qu'il y aurait une différence entre la
Alors,
nous, il parle de l'industrie. Donc, tu vois, par exemple, qui rachètent l'entreprise, et s'il y en a qui sont sociétaires et d'autres pas, est-ce qu'il y a une différence dans la distribution des...
Je pense qu'il suppose qu'il y a des travailleurs qui sont associés.
Oui, dans le cas où il y a des travailleurs qui sont sociétaires.
In the case of both of members and non-members, what would be the surplus? Surplus distribution.
C'est-à-dire que si une coopérative de travailleurs, tous ces travailleurs qui sont associés, il va y avoir un traitement différent entre ceux qui sont associés et qui ne sont pas associés sur certains plans. La participation à la gouvernance, mais aussi la redistribution éventuelle des bénéfices va forcément se faire vers les associés et pas vers ceux qui ne sont pas associés.
Sur la répartition.
Can you...
There would be differences in terms of governance and economic redistribution if there are members and
Would be differentiated between associated and non-associated. That was my question. Yeah.
Absolument.
Thank you. Can I go on with questions? Or
There can be differences, and maybe in some cases there must be differences, because otherwise we get some free riding. That's one of the biggest challenges of cooperative. So you really have to think about it, and that's what Jacques wants to do.
That was exactly my point.
Of course.
That's why a question. Okay. I mean, because it's a crucial one. The two questions for you concern board, exactly the constitution of board. First, I wonder, did you allow or experience to have non-associated members of the board, or must they be so far only associated members to be into the board?
I have a very precise answer. Our statutes are perfectly clear about it. One member of maximum one member of the board can be someone not being associated.
In our case, it's all have to be.
They must be all associated. Okay.
And there are different categories.
Yeah. Did you did you discuss this choice, or it was, let's say, natural and non-discussed cases?
In the case of the BeesCoop, it is from the beginning on. It is so in the statutes. And if I know correctly what happened in Smart, the first version of the status has come from the sky.
Spiritual. Okay.
But there has been, so there was always, they always had to be cooperators. They have to have a share of the cooperative. But the accessibility to this shares and status of associate has changed for certain categories. There has been a debate. For example, what we call the, in English this again, neutralized team, basically the staff of the co-op. They had different access to membership than the others. Others only had to buy one share, while theirs initially was 1% of their gross income, which was a lot for them, and was an impediment to many workers.
Mm-hmm.
Economical or ideological, both. And so there have been debates, and so recently, in the last version of the statutes, it was the same thing. For staff members, it's just like any other members, it's one share, and that has opened up a lot of opportunity. And actually, from what I see, is that the fact that it's only one share like anybody else, it has opened up involvement in the governance of a lot more workers than before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to add something.
At the beginning, there are two categories.
Yeah.
The members, self-employed, and
the other people. And the other people.
Yeah, all the others.
Rest of the world. And client, staff, partners. And we merged, divided in two categories to concept one category for staff and team support and
the other one is the rest. To recognize the specificities of the staff compared to the freelancers or the rest of the world.
Okay, so you have already answered to my second question.
I have maybe two quick questions for Sarah and Jerome. So you spoke about this growth period of SMART and then moving towards increasing the participation of members. Now, this seems to me, I mean, every organization has its history, but to be a challenge, or I will rephrase it. Was this a challenge to first grow and then move towards increasing participation? And my second question is your ethical committee. It's fascinating. I'm hearing about this for the first time. Were you at all inspired by other groups, other examples? I'm thinking about Mondragon with the social councils that they have in their cooperatives. Or was this a organic idea?
Avant the ethical and the So regarding the ethical committee, it was, I mean, I participated in the work as committed staff interested in the future of the SMART. I was just a random participant of the working group. On SMART with who and for who. And it was fascinating to see how easily that working group said, of course, it's for everybody. Well, internally, when it was the staff answering that question, it was furious debate. No, we have to stay in the creative sector, we lose our soul. And all this, the members like, no, we have to open up. But we need this ethical committee. And so it was, we didn't really have any inspiration because we didn't really, because I mean, the council, cooperative council in Mondragon is something else. It deals with issues linked to the cooperative organization or issues between the members and the co-ops. Here, we're really saying it's kind of like, you know, like, it's really, how do you say, the objective is really to make sure that the values of the SMART are maintained, that the practices don't go astray. Because if you're growing, if you're diversifying, that risk is huge. And so we didn't really find examples, so we kind of, but there was a working group that was set up to see how we wanted to function. And what was interesting, because I chaired that working group, and I remember the debates were really interesting because it involved a lot of people who were participating in that working group who were very concerned about democratic practices, saying if we have people candidate for it, we are always going to have the same usual suspects. And our running joke kind of was, we want to make sure that the single mom who lives in the deepest forest of Belgium, Luxembourg, can participate, but she will never volunteer herself. So we have to go grab her. And the only way we can go find her is if we select random. We never selected that woman, but I hope we will one day. So we did it from scratch. There was really the idea of the working group that was implemented. Sometimes it was important to also remind why we wanted that selection. I remember the board, when we gave a recommendation, said, well, maybe the ethical committee should be a board of like the stage, the wise people of SMART. And we're like, well, who are the wise people of SMART? The friends of friends? That's not very democratic. So we insisted, and we managed to have the ethical committee that the working group wanted. And but that's why we have experts that help us. And one expert comes from a cooperative that's very similar, Chaire, and the other one comes from a totally different sector, which is also interesting because it's a fresh view for us.
As to the first part of your question, to grow first and involve people later. At the beginning, SMART exploded, literally, and it had to grow as a first task because we had a very unfriendly environment. We had, everybody knows it, we have had some very serious conflicts with the trade unions. And so in our opinion, then, growing was a problem of life or death. And we did, and we succeeded. And then came the other questions of participation, involving the users, and involving the users was much more about the feeling of a community than a problem of democracy. I was everything but a democratic leader. So the problems of democracy are young in the structure.
Je vais répondre en français. Le challenge sur la participation, souvent on pense coopérative et participation ou vie coopérative tournée vers l'organisation et vers la structure par les assemblées générales, par les conseils d'administration. Et le processus Smart in Progress, tel qu'il a existé à Smart, a contribué à cette participation-là avec des membres qui attendaient les solutions de la structure et qui formulaient des recommandations, des besoins, et qui attendaient que tous les projets des 220 recommandations soient mises en place par la structure. Et il a semblé important de faire le mouvement pour se dire comment les 34 000 sociétaires peuvent eux-mêmes construire des solutions. Alors, pas nécessairement des solutions pour tout Smart, d'abord tester des solutions à leur niveau, entre eux, pour répondre à leurs besoins, pour ensuite qu'on puisse, et qu'on accompagne en fait ce travail-là, pour qu'ensuite on puisse déployer plus largement. Et le challenge, il est un peu sur ces différents sujets-là, c'est-à-dire il y a effectivement la structure et sa vie d'assemblée générale, de conseil d'administration, de stratégie d'ensemble, et puis il y a le quotidien des travailleurs sur lesquels il y a des solutions à apporter dans les exemples que tu cites sur la bijouterie, sur les véhicules, les marchés, et donc réussir à faire participer et à faire vivre cette coopération, ce collectif et cette démocratie sur ces différents échelles.
So it seems necessary to create structures to promote then later this dialogue. So maybe not every company, not every organization can have such a transformation if you don't have this culture. But maybe that's my reaction.
It was created. It wasn't there from scratch.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, if you had now Amazon, for instance, and you're trying to increase the participation and respond to the needs of the workers of Amazon, probably it would be more difficult. It would be a longer journey than with Smart. This is what I'm getting from your response.
Take another beater.
Maybe 2 ethical councils. So maybe we take a break now for 10 minutes, or because we don't.
I think it's important we finish on time.
Yeah.
We cannot extend. It's not.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess everyone probably has some needs and so on. We can take a break, 10 minutes, and we come back or I guess 13 minutes. We come back at 15 past the hour, and I think that should be enough for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So see everyone in 13 minutes. Or did I say not 13 minutes? I'm sorry. 15 past. Yes.
Ce que vous faites énormément, c'est sûr.
C'est jamais fini.
Il faudrait ce oui. Ok.
Et le staff, je dis management qui est là, mais et le staff, il doit être
Voor samen ik ben samen met Daan het dagelijks bestuur. Dus als voorzitter ik ben de baas van het team. Het is eigenlijk een zeer vlak Daan is coördinator. Maar ik ben samen met Daan dus de voorzitter van de raad van bestuur.
Mag ik dat zeggen?
Ja, wij hebben, als ik dat hier zo hoor, ook bijgehouden, wij hebben zelf onze weg op. Dus ook, het waren eigenlijk begin was personeel de raad van bestuur. Meer vrijwilligers. En dan zijn die werknemer geworden, en dan zijn er anderen bijgekomen. En nu is het eigenlijk zo dat we bestreven naar de helft bestuurders van het personeel en de helft externe doen wij dan, maar dat zijn leden. Nee, bijgebouwd. Ja, dus wat is dat nu? Is dat een werkerscoöperatie? Nee, is geen werkerscoöperatie. Is dat er een verschillende categorieën of ook niet? Maar dat we hebben nog nooit gestemd in de raad.
Volgens mij is
Want die bestuurders, die personeel zijn, zitten daar niet voor het personeel. De mensen worden thuis. Niemand meer majoritair.
Alleen niet alles, maar toch een mijlpaal.
C'est 2 tiers, 1 tiers, 2 tiers et 1 tiers sur la catégorie.
Nu vragen ze mij om dringend iets te tekenen, dus ik ga... Daarvoor moet ik ook voor de
Omdat jij de vertegenwoordiger
Mais
You're not in the office? Okay. You are? Yeah. Okay. So this is okay. Yes. Finally we meet.
Oui. C'est un autre travail dynamique, mais On allait solliciter des personnes bien formées. Si elles ne le faisaient pas maintenant, il fallait attendre 4 ans. Donc, il a demandé du lien et l'investissement. Les personnes peuvent venir oui, ok. On va faire
The message is that he wants to pay
à la
c'est des choses qui vont dans la même direction, mais très éloignées.
J'imagine que et là, il y a de jusqu'à quel point
Our major problem is capture.
In the web page of your
and where is
yeah.
Milano
Madame et messieurs.
So we have to keep the mic off of our.
Lucio. Lucio.
Merci.
And your English is fine.
It's not rusty at all. Here.
Fishing program.
It's always good. Working with Isabelle.
Everything's going smoothly. Yes. So, welcome back, everyone. We have a very tight schedule today, so once we get started again, so we don't run over, we would want to respect everyone's time. And so, we begin the second part of the session today, moving away from practitioners to academics, to the world of ideas. I would like to begin actually with Isabelle. Isabelle Ferreras has done a lot of work on exactly these issues of democratizing work. Her 2017 book, which is an excellent study of preparing a political theory of the firm, seeing firms as political entities, and has released last year, along with several other women authors, which one should also emphasize, the book on democratizing work. So it's working in this international network. And so, yes, I would just give the floor to Isabelle.
Thank you, Jerome. So I guess you can hear me fine online, right? So I will make my remarks as concise as possible, right? To keep these remarks in 10 minutes and not 15, so that we can have hopefully some half hour for discussion. Thank you very much for the organization of the meeting. It's very exciting that we can indeed look at cooperatives in the lens of democracy. Democracy being understood as a project, as something that is not finished. And I read in the very interesting guidance notes to the cooperative principles established by the ICE, as Jacques told us earlier, that let me read this very inspiring sentence. In cooperatives, democracy includes considerations of rights and the responsibilities which attend such rights. But it also means fostering the spirit of democracy within cooperatives, a never-ending, difficult, but socially valuable and essential task. One of the key benefits of cooperatives is that they help plant democratic roots within the fertile soil of civil society. And so with this very inspiring sentence, I would like to, basically I have 5 points. The two first ones are factual observations. Then I will look at some more empirical issues, and then come to the philosophical principle that we are actually discussing here, and ending with a challenge to the cooperative world. So the first point is grounded in the observation that workers are those who basically invest all of themselves in the endeavor that is the firm, whatever work we have in mind. They invest their body, so it concerns their physical health, but it's also, it's also an investment in mind. And it concerns their mental health. So work is really this crucial investment that people do. And actually, as they do work, they are governed by the rules and decisions of the firm. And in a democracy, working people experience actually what is the ultimate contradiction between capitalism and democracy, which is the fact that these two regimes of government actually collide into their everyday life. As a worker, they have this expectation to be a citizen, to be treated as equal in dignity and rights, as says the Article 1st of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and at the same time, they are governed by a regime of government in the context of capitalist firms, a regime of government which allocates the political right to govern to those who own the capital injected in generally the cooperation. And actually, when you think about the second principle of the cooperatives, the democratic organization, I'm moving to my second observation. Cooperatives are democratic organizations controlled by their members who actively participate in setting their policies and making decisions. So we learn that cooperatives are jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. These are all the words that the cooperative movement uses. And indeed, when you look at these words, you actually see a reality that is absolutely not different from the reality seen from the eyes of shareholders inside corporations in such a way that they themselves think of themselves as participating in what they call the shareholders' democracy of the corporation, because they own the shares, they participate, they democratically control the enterprise. And so that leads situations such as, I mean, we learned from Leo that the S group in Finland, for instance, has 2 employee representatives out of a board of 21, or the Migros cooperative that we mentioned for Switzerland, which is this huge cooperative, as I checked, 2 employee representatives out of a board of 23. And actually, these are the exact same numbers that you find for Total in France, thanks to the Loi Pacte, which is like the major progress that capitalism has known in terms of representation of workers on the board in the last few years. That was in France, with the obligation for major companies to have 2 employee representatives on their boards. So that is these are the striking facts that I wanted to highlight, because obviously in the democratic cooperative spirit there is this ambition to constitute, and Jacques reminded us with that, to constitute an alternative to capitalism. The alternative to capitalism should, of course, move deeper into this democratic quest that inspires the cooperative movement. And that's my third point. We have been seeing that the democratic principle, I would say, working inside cooperatives as a very vibrant, very vivid intuition that actually today moved smart to, as Sarah and Jerome explained, to improve, I would say, the consideration that Smart as a cooperative has been giving to its own employees. The permanent staff, let's say, has been made into a specific category, enabling representation at the board level, and also lowering the fees to get a voice, making it more easier, and Sarah testified about that. The effects of those moves are certainly positive, but we are far from this ideal of consenting to the rules that govern you at work, which basically in the understanding of the democratic quest have to be core and center of the cooperative project. And so that brings me to the fourth point, which is what's exactly the philosophical principle that would here be practicable, thank you, practicable to put into practice this idea of consent the consent of the governed, which is the basic threshold of democracy. And this is indeed the principle that we affirmed in the Democratizing Work manifesto that Jerome mentioned, and that actually many of you signed. That's the idea that the personal investment of labor, that is of one's mind and body, one's health, one's very life, ought to come with the collective right to validate or veto the decisions of the firm. That collective veto right for those who are governed is really the threshold, I guess, for democratic government. And so that leads me to finish with this challenge to the cooperative world today, is to really take so seriously its own idea, has to turn every cooperative into also a worker cooperative. As Jacques reminded us, we know that most of the cooperatives are not worker cooperatives, but there is a way to accommodate actually these consumers cooperative, producers cooperative, etc., with the democratic principle for the government of the workers themselves. If you look at, for instance, what exists in France as a legal structure, the multi-stakeholder cooperatives, with specific colleges of representation and voters, you can have, as you have your representation of consumers, you can have next to that representation, the representation for your own workers, and you can imagine to grant them the veto right on all the decisions of the cooperative. It's not a practice in my so far in my knowledge today, but we have to imagine, we have to move deeper into what's possible to make the possibility for indeed workers in the context of cooperatives to have the ability to be represented and to I think Julien wants to add something. Please go ahead.
I have to check something with Jerome, and I think it's compulsory to have workers' representation in a society cooperative, not a collective. It's not only an option. If you create a C, you have to create a chamber for the workers.
Two obligate.
Okay. So that's wonderful news. I'm very happy to break the news internationally. But whatever the situation in France, I certainly do not want to take France as an example for our discussion on democracy. It's good, and that's the whole point I wanted to make. There are ways legally to make this possible, to morph cooperatives that are not worker cooperative, to morph them into structure that will deepen their democratic commitment by giving their own workers the ability to be represented and to collectively validate the ends of the firm and the means put in practice. So thank you very much for your listening.
Isabelle, and well, we will have a question and answer session. And thank you for being very short. I know this is a topic that you're very passionate about, so I'm sure you could have said much more. So now we move on to Lucio. Yes, but if you want to click, then you have to take this. But let me. You have yes, like push. Yeah, it's a little. You do it. I will do it. Oui. Bien sûr.
So. Okay, so good. Thank you very much.
By the way, just to introduce, is a professor at the University of L'Aquila in Italy in organizational studies and economics. Mm-hmm. So go straight into the topic.
Okay, so thank you very much first to invite me here and listen to your interesting, very interesting talks. I hope it will look not too much abstract what I'm going to say. I try to connect as much as possible with the concrete issues, concrete themes. And the question is just, can you skip this one?
I don't know how.
Okay. It's measuring a firm's democracy. How can we measure it? Not just talking about, which is of course very much important, but having measures, quantitative measures. That's important. And it's all but simple. It's a complex problem. And I'm trying now to give you some sketch into the question. Okay, go. So crucial questions. Go. First question. Does democratic mean non-hierarchical? So this is a very good question, because sometimes things are very much confused or taken as synonyms. So if it's democratic, it means it's not hierarchical. If it's hierarchical, no, and vice versa. And I will try to show you that these two things are separated, distinguished, and it's important to keep them distinguished, or at least, let's call it the degree of hierarchy, because hierarchy is not a question yes, not. It's not there is or there isn't. It's a question of degree. So you can be very hierarchical. You can have, I will show you, a pure hierarchy, and you can have the opposite, the full opposite. So in the middle, there are many different possibilities. And it's just a degree, a question of degree. Oh, by the way, real numbers, meaning that you can have fractions, more or less, from 0% up to 100%. And that's exactly my goal. Since many years, I'm trying to transform in mathematical terms these problems. I'm trying to reach a conclusion and something that is practical. It can be used to measure and see this company or this co-op is more or is less hierarchical than this other. And also the further step, combining the degree of hierarchy with other aspects, economic aspects, and let's call it political aspects, these elections, votes, reaching, if maybe not just one single index, which I think is not possible to have, at least having a small, a little set of indexes, 2, 3 that combined together can give us the very precise and mathematical picture of the degree of democracy. About which hierarchy is only one component, but it's an important component. And as far as I understood, and I listened to your very interesting presentations, it seems to me that you are very much committed and focused on the political aspects. Let's say political, a mechanism of election and the representation. What is in economics is called the agency problem, no? So delegates and blah, 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 and which is of course very important. No, I'm not saying that it's not important, but it's only part of the story. That's my message to you today. It's part of the story. You can have a lot of very good, maybe perfect or quasi-perfect mechanism of representation, of election of delegates, and be very much hierarchical at the same time. And that's the point. And my suggestion, my recommendation, humble because I'm not expert in your specific field of cooperative, and I want to learn much more, is please pay attention to this aspect.
There is not only political aspects, it's a question of structure. What I'm going to show you with some simple figure is that some structures can be very much, very well and very democratic in the political sense, but very hierarchical as well. So the question must be clear both at the same time to have a democratic organization, be it a cooperative or be it also a corporation. I mean, the question is, the problem is the same. And of course, the things and the degrees of democracy will be very much different. And by itself, by its very nature, cooperatives are much more democratic than corporations, of course, and that's why I like them. But the story is more complicated. That's the point. Please. So, and then, okay, this is what I discussed just now. Elective versus non-elective mechanism of agency. Is it enough to encompass the problem of the democracy? I already anticipated no. Go on. Is the economic dimension enough to encompass the problem? Again, the answer is no. So even if you have egalitarian shares in the company and every man, every person, the same share, no more than the same share, but this not so, does not encompass all the problem of firms' democracy. Next. And the last point is it possible to measure the structural dimension? Let's call it that way. The structural dimension of the firm's democracy? So the answer is possible. And I'm going to show you just some small piece of the story in this presentation. Can you go on, please? Okay, so click again. Two wide and partially related dimensions. The economic legal aspects, and can you click, and the structural aspects. Click again. So in the economic legal aspects, we have the question of the property distribution. There is one vote, one person, perfect, or one person, 100% of votes, no? In the case of normal, let's say, capitalistic corporation, no? Capitalistic firm. And from the property distribution, you have also you go to the question of the property rights. So which rights are enabled by a certain distribution of the property. And from this, we go to the decision rights, the rights to participate more or less into the decisions, typically the board, and not only the board, but many other structures inside the company. And finally, of course, this leads also to the distribution of a surplus. I use this term, which is typical of classical economists and not a neoclassical economist, it is standard economics, because it's much more appropriate, The surplus is at the very end the difference, the balance between revenues and costs. That is surplus, So you can call it profit, can call it dividends, depending on many other aspects. But basically, that's the value that you can distribute. That's the surplus. And that was exactly the idea that Ricardo, Smith, Marx had in mind when they discussed these questions. Now let's go to the structural aspects. That is actually the focus of my speech. That is, we have four fundamental components. That's not easy to calculate and then to put together, to combine together. One is the asymmetric versus symmetric links. Symmetric links. Links means a connection between two persons. The other one is concentrated versus distributed links. So concentrated means that there is one boss who decides everything. Okay? The other one is actually elective versus non-elective, the other factor. And finally, dynamic versus static. That is, what does it mean? It means that if it's static, once we define the board, everything is done and forever until somebody will die or resign will be the same board, or the same mechanism can be. No? So dynamic versus static. So go on. Okay, skip this. It's not too much, not enough time to discuss this. Go on, go on. Okay, click. So to have the. So these are the extreme opposites. Now we are looking at the structural aspects. I put aside the other aspects, the economic, legal. They are the aspects much more discussed in the debate, in the literature, in cooperative or in non-cooperative capitalistic firms. And usually the debate is focused on economic, legal aspects. So now we are looking at the other aspects. So we have distribute and I took the two extremes of the three factors, which compound a vision in three dimensions, in which we can understand the extreme opposites of the pure hierarchy and its opposite, which is the pure team. So one factor is distributed versus concentrated links. Go on clicking, please. The other one is symmetric versus asymmetric. And the other one is elective versus coercive. Elective means bottom up. We decide who will be our delegates, like in any democracy, in a broad political sense. Dictatorship is coercive, is top-down. You do not elect your boss. There is a mechanism that is coming from the owners electing the board, the president, and then top down all the other people, the other hierarchical levels. So in the opposite extremes, we have the pure hierarchy, where we have the combination of coercive hierarchy, asymmetric links, and concentrated links. There is concentration of power, okay? Totally asymmetry in the decisions. So I decide on you what you should do. I give you orders, commands, whatever you want to call them, or make decisions for what you have to do, and you don't decide about me anything. This is the asymmetric link. And that's the source of power. We are going to see this now. So there is at the opposite point, a combination that makes the pure hierarchy with coercive, as all asymmetric links and power concentration, all the three maximum point at this situation, pure hierarchy. And vice versa, we have the team. In a team, everybody is connected with everybody else. It is what is called in mathematical jargon, in graph theory, a clique. And also, a clique, cricca in Italian. Also, some people who are connected one another, we can call it team, usually. A team, so it's a group of peers, and usually they are elected. And in this case, the power is not concentrated, opposite. If we are going to measure the degree of concentration of power is 0. Because I make decisions on you and you make decisions on me. And all the other members of the group are interacting at the same level. There is no prevalence of one on the others. Go on. Okay, go on, click. So at the very end, a power relationship is the decision asymmetry. What I just said. A decides over B, go on, and B does not decide anything. This is the basic, no, let's say the fundament of power relationship between two people, taking a dyad as the basic unity of reference. Go on. Okay, go on again. Go. Finish the slide. Okay, we can have all together. No. Previous slide.
Ah, sorry.
No, previous. This is the following. Previous. No, you're going ahead. You have to go back.
But I'm pushing backwards. Why is this going forwards? Okay, so sorry. Am I going now backwards?
Back.
Is this right?
Yeah.
Back. Yeah, you went to the end.
What? I don't know what happened. Sorry. So I was going backwards. Okay, so this was here we are. This is it? No. This is it.
That's the
Yeah, this one. Okay, so we can look at the so this asymmetry, basic asymmetry, can have many rationales, many sources. Let's say, no. For instance, violence. I make decision on you because I'm bigger than you. I can force you to do what I want. Or I can be so much charismatic, okay, then others do what I want and not vice versa. This is another source of power between two and more people. The talent of the leader in a group, emerging from the group, or many others. So if we keep in mind this aspect, this sounds so simple. We have already some interesting index, mathematical index. So we can count the number of asymmetric links, so power relationship, out of all links of the organization. This is a very good measure, actually, no? And so this will be the share of symmetric links or asymmetric, depending on the goal. And this is quite interesting. So the higher the share of symmetric links, the more democratic it is. Because the less number of unbalanced, let's say, no, power relationships are. We just have to count them. Count how many people are in the organization. Look at all the links between these people. Now we are going to see that. Next slide. And wait. And then we can just calculate the share. How many symmetric, so balanced, let's say, or better say reciprocal, over all the links, all the relationship. And actually, if you think about that, it's very interesting because the concept of reciprocity is one of the basic principles in cooperative and in any community. Reciprocity. The higher the reciprocity degree, and the more democratic is the community or the organization. So that's why this is a very good index. And then we can calculate precisely. Go on. We can also refine this index and this mathematical representation. Because, of course, there can be many decisions holding between two people, not just one. And more further, some of these decisions maybe flow from me to you, and some others from you to me. So again, we shouldn't think in black and white. We are not forced to believe that it's yes or not, a binary situation. We can represent, go on, click twice. In this way, there is, okay, let's say that B is here, okay? For some reason, the format gets lost. we can represent it this way. That is the same situation, but not exactly the same, from A to B and from B to A, so bi-directional. No? Because decision can go one way and the other. And we can use numbers. So we can use what is called weighted links. Weighted according to the relevance of the decision. Because not all decisions have the same relevance. No? For instance, the board is supposed to take the most important decisions. No? Decision to cease the activity or to merge or to do, strategic decisions. No, other decisions are operative decisions, less important. Okay, so we can have a measure. Again, we can measure this in mathematical terms and keep count of the relevance, putting a number. No, let's say conventionally we can say from 0 to 10. Okay, or from 1 to 10. Say 1 minimum relevance, 10 maximum relevance. And so we have a weighted link. And the link can be, as we say, one way, weighted, and one way from A to B or B to A, if there is a pure hierarchical relationship, or can be in both directions. Go on. Okay, so go on. Let's look, click more. Okay, so let's look at these three structures. 3 micro hertz, very, very simple, okay? Supposed to be trivial. But now I ask you, okay, please tell me which one of these 3 is more hierarchical and which is less?
A is less. Oh, sorry, A is more hierarchical.
A is more hierarchical.
No, sorry, 2 is 2.
Figure 1?
2. Figure 2.
Figure 2 is more hierarchical.
Yeah. And figure 3 is the less hierarchical.
Any other opinion? Because at the very end, this sounds something concrete, no? We can have a micro firm, a micro cooperative, and how is it organized? So links are representing, I didn't say that, but it's trivial. Links are representing decisions, and points are representing people. No? At the very end, an organization can be seen as a network of people connected by decisions. Of course, it's much more. A real organization, of course, is much more, but this is just a mathematical representation, which is actually something that is very useful, very good that we can use. Now, let's look. Of course, Sarah is right. No? This is the most hierarchical structure between this. Okay, so there is A who plays as a boss, make decisions for the others. One way, only one way, from A to B, C, D. Okay, that's pretty clear. Now, what is interesting in this representation is, in these cases, is this figure. Because it's exactly why election mechanisms are not enough to deal with the question of democracy. Because let's look at this case. Relationships, single links are symmetric. Okay? So it's supposed that there is no any superiority of one of these 5 people over the others, right? They're symmetric. Are they symmetric?
No, because everybody goes to A. There's no arrows between B and C, D and E, and so on.
Okay, but look at the structure of single dyads, single relationships. It's symmetric. So if B, C, D, E elect A as a delegate, is a democratic structure. And they don't have any power imbalance between them because it's symmetric relationship. But of course, Sarah again is right. And what is the meaning of this? The meaning is that non-democratic structure can be not in single relationships or in the mechanism of election, can be precisely into the structure, or this in the jargon, in the precisely called topology, in the topology of the structure. So in the distribution of links. So each single link is balanced. Each single link is showing that there is a group of peers, democratic relationship. No any supremacy of one over the other. But the non-democracy, or let's say the anti-democratic aspect, is into the whole structure. Why? Because A is involved in all the decisions of the group, while the other people of the group are involved only in one relationship with A. Okay, just a few minutes more to arrive to a point. Okay, go on. So this is a topology-based cause of hierarchy. So the hierarchy, so the anti-democratic structure is into the topology and not in the ideas. And that's why what I just said, measuring the degree of reciprocity, is not enough. It's a good measure. Be careful. It's a good measure, but it does not encompass all the complex problem of measuring hierarchy. Because if we count the degree, if we make the calculation of the degree of reciprocity in this graph, in this structure, how much is, Sarah, how much is the degree of reciprocity here? It's 100%. So in turn, if we calculate, if we measure the degree of democracy only according to the asymmetry of relationships, we are avoiding to consider, we skip another aspect. That is the topology, the hierarchy, due to the structure of the topology, the whole structure. So we have to deal with this. Next, so very short, then I will say, fall down and die. So to close the story. No, I get further. Go on. Okay, let's look at this. This is also interesting. Click again. Okay, let's look at this graph, at this structure. This structure is just a hierarchical structure. Is what is called the organization chart. The yellow, the red is the general manager. The yellow are the high, let's say, top managers, and the blue are the middle managers, and these are the workers. That are blue. This is a typical organization chart, very much hierarchical. Now, let's do a mental exercise. Mental exercise is, imagine the same number of people, the same size, 85. They are 85. Imagine the 85 with only one boss. So skipping all the hierarchical levels, one connected with the other 84. Okay, so my question is, which structure is more hierarchical between the two? Between this one, imagine a star, okay, a star structure. The center is the boss and all the others. Who is more hierarchical between these two? The same size, 85. Both have the same score in terms of degree of reciprocity, because degree of reciprocity is 0. These are all asymmetric links. But how can we answer? So which one of the two is more hierarchical? This is more complicated. Sarah is mumbling.
Well, maybe this one?
I hear boo.
Maybe this one?
This one. So this is the usual answer. And it's the common sense, but not only common sense. Even if I would ask the same, my colleagues, 99% would answer the same. So you can consolidate, if any. Okay, and because that's the idea. The common idea is that the more layers are, the more hierarchical levels are, the more hierarchical is the organization, the higher the degree of hierarchy. And it's not so. So, and why this example? Because the question is just that it's more subtle than intuition. So we need measures. We have to calculate it. So that's why my point is we have to invest some time and resources in the theoretical and empirical aspect. Go to the last slide. So that I close it.
Just the last, tell me when to stop.
Yeah. Okay, this one. So what do we need at the very end? We need an index or likely a set of indexes, because compressing many aspects in one single index is not easy, and sometimes it mathematically can be done, but maybe conceptually is a mistake. So it's something that is very subtle. Getting an index or a set of indexes that synthesizes the various aspects of the economic dimension of firms' democracy. The other point is an index or a set of indexes that synthesizes the various aspects of its structural dimension. What I said, for instance, the degree of reciprocity, the calculation of the hierarchical degree in terms of power concentration, other issues that I couldn't show you will be for the next episode. And then we have to combine these two sets. This is even more complicated. So combining the economic legal aspects and the structural aspects. Again, I guess it will be impossible to have just one single index, but at least if we could get a small set of indexes could be a very good success. And then the point is, what about empirical tests? And that's the hardest part somehow, because, click please, because the question is that is, in my opinion, is not so difficult for the economic dimension, because at the very end there are so many data available on economic aspects. I don't know how much about cooperatives. I'm very ignorant in the field, but for instance, for capitalistic organization, limited liability, the balance sheet, income statement, in the Chamber of Commerce, we can find almost anything we need for the distribution of shares, the concentration of capital, at least a lot of information, if not all, many. The hardest part is about the structures. Because to make all the measures that I did in the graphs that I show you, you need to have the organization chart, detailed organization chart. Because without the organization chart, you don't know, you cannot measure the degree of hierarchy and all the other aspects. Huh? And that's the hardest part. So which company or which cooperative, maybe cooperatives can be more open. I hope so. That's my wish, my hope. Because usually capitalistic companies are not obliged to give any organization chart, and they never did it. Almost never. Very seldom they give it to you, usually when it is past 20 years before and it's not the more critical information. Okay, give it to this poor scientist who is making us wasting time. That's what happens because it's not compulsory. Balance sheet and income statement is compulsory. They have to provide it to the Chamber of Commerce, and so we can access those data, but not the inner structure. And in the inner structure actually are hidden very important information, crucial information about how the company is structured, is organized. So it's very hard to get to those type of things. But maybe just making an appeal and a claim for democracy and so transparency, which is something very close to democracy, maybe cooperatives can. And it could be, I think, interesting also for the cooperative world to wonder, okay, in our story, for instance, in our history, no, the organization, are we going towards a more democratic in the sense of hierarchical or less? Isn't it a good question? Maybe it is. Because that's a very strongly related with democracy. Democracy, again, is not only political issues, electing people, mechanism of election of agency and how to remove people. The hierarchy and the anti-democratic structure is into the topology and does not claim, oh, I am anti-democratic by, no? You have to discover it. Okay. Thank you.